Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Balancing the Bargain, the Art of Negotiation webinar. My name is Mel, and I am an events coordinator here at CMI. I will shortly be handing over to David, who is running this session today. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can. Today's session is being recorded, and it will be shared with you later on today. Now over to David, Chartered Management Consultant, Assessment Manager at the Chartered Management Institute.
Thanks, Mel, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to this latest webinar. Before we get started, I just want to highlight to you that negotiation is a really complex process. And while I'm going to be touching on some of the basics of it today, if you want to know more about negotiation, the Management Direct site, if you're a member, has loads of other resources that you can tap into. So we're going to get you started, but if you need more, that's the place to go. So when we're thinking about negotiation, it's really important to remember that negotiation is meant to be a win-win. Both sides should come away with something that they feel it is worth having, that's of value, and they both feel that they've gained something from the process. Negotiation isn't a battle. It's not meant to be a war that's meant to be won. Those days of thinking about negotiation as a used car salesman and those kind of old memes that people used to have, those days are gone and should never have existed in the first place in my mind. It is very much a negotiation between two people, two organisations, to get the best for both sides, and I think that's really worth remembering. And I think something that I'd like us to bear in mind as we go through, there's an old Zen proverb that says, never take anything that isn't freely given. And I think when you're going into negotiation, it's really worth remembering that, because you want to come out of this feeling good. And we'll talk about ethics as we go through this. But both sides need to come out feeling good about what's happened and how they've got through the process and what they've achieved. So before we start to negotiate, there are some important questions that we need to ask ourselves. We need to think about, what are my feelings about negotiation? Do I feel that I can do this? Do I feel this is something that I want to get involved in? Do I feel mentally and physically strong enough to get involved in this? It can feel like a battle, even though it's not meant to be a battle. We can feel embarrassed. We can feel unsure about this process that we're going into. We can feel, what is it we're trying to achieve, and should we be achieving that, or should we just take what the other side is offering and run with it? And that really ties in with the culture, because we need to think about the culture, not only of negotiation, but is negotiation part of a culture? If you go on foreign holidays, sometimes you will go to the market necessarily, perhaps, and try to purchase something. And there are places in the world where you're expected to negotiate. A vendor will give you a price, and if you accept the price, you'll offend them. So there needs to be a negotiation that takes place for both sides to feel comfortable that the whole process has been ethical, has gone through that process, and everybody feels that they've won. So think about the culture. Equally, if the culture of an organisation you're dealing with, or a person you're dealing with, is not to negotiate, then you need to understand that as well, because again, you can cause offence. We need to think about, what is the cost of negotiation and what are the benefits of negotiating? And we need to think about, although this isn't a war, we also don't want to have Pyrrhic victories. And what I mean by that is, we can go into a negotiation, and if we focus on the wrong things and we deal with it in the wrong way, we can end up in a situation where the other party won't deal with us again. So we've won the negotiation, we come away thinking, yeah, got the price I wanted, got the deal I wanted, it's all done, I feel really good about this. The other side feels terrible, and when it comes to dealing with you again, they will say no. They'll find another person, they'll find one of your competitors that they feel more happy with dealing with a negotiation. So you need to consider these things as we go through. And sometimes it's about saying, do you know what, a negotiation needs to take place, but I might not be the best person to do it. We need to think about the time it takes to negotiate. And when we think about that linked with the costs and benefits, is it worth it? We've all seen situations, haven't we, where we negotiate for a holiday. We think, right, I'm not going to pay the travel agent because I think they're charging too much. So I'm going to go on to booking.com and I'm going to get myself a hotel. I'm going to find myself a flight when we can all do that sort of thing again. I'm going to get the taxi from the airport. I'm going to do all these things, and I've saved 50 quid. It's taken me 24 hours to do that. 24 hours at 50 quid. You know, is it worth it? So you have to think about, is the time it takes to negotiate worth what you're going to gain from the negotiation? And if it is, you need to factor that into the process as well, because there's a cost involved in that, whether it's personal, whether it's private life, whether it's work and you're being paid by the hour or paid by the day to engage in that negotiation. Is the outcome of that worth it? Do you have the skill to negotiate? Now, that's a really strange question. You might say, well, you know, I negotiate all the time. I negotiate in relationships. I negotiate when I go to buy a car. I negotiate with what I'm going to do with my time. I negotiate with my partner's time, with my friend's time. We do all these things, but have you got the skill to do this in a business way? And you need to think about that as well. Again, are you the best person to do this negotiation process? And along with that, we need to think about, what am I aiming to achieve by this and why? Why do I want that thing that I'm aiming for? What is it that I'm going to get from that? What is it that I need from that? What is the outcome likely to be? And do I want that? And one of the biggest things we need to think about is the ethical side of this. When we're talking about ethics, and we'll talk about this a lot as we go through, this will keep coming up as we go through to the process today. But when we think about ethics, I think there's three things you need to think about. What is your gut saying about this? Are you getting something that isn't freely given from the other side? Are you beating them up to win the negotiation? Do you feel comfortable that your family and friends would hear about your negotiation? So what is it that you're doing? Does it feel right? Would you want your family and your friends to know what you're doing, know how you've done it? And I think that's really important to think about as we go through this, because to be a good negotiator, you need to come away feeling respected, because that's all part of the process. That goes back to what I was saying earlier about the costs versus the benefits, and don't go for a Pyrrhic victory. And ideally, the purpose of negotiation is to get to yes. We want to get to a point where we all agree, where both sides can say, yeah, I'm happy with that. I feel I've got something out of that. We've gone through a process. I've enjoyed the process. Happy to tell my friends and family about it. And we've gotten to yes, we're agreeing. What we don't want to ever end up with is a process where we go through it and the outcome is that we've got a yes because they've got a no, we've beaten them down, or the other way around. Or they have no choice but to say yes. And that's something really different as well. We need to think about that as we're going through the process. Now, you may, of course, feel completely comfortable with that. You may feel actually that what you're doing is great and you win every negotiation, and you win on the basis that you come away feeling powerful, you feel that you've won, you feel that you've achieved something. And I don't really care what the other side feels. And you may feel that. And if that's your culture and your values, you know, I'm not trying to change that. That's absolutely fine. Just think about it, think what that's doing in the long term. Consider if that's right for you. And if it is, crack on. If it isn't, you may want to talk to other people to get different ideas and different perspectives on why you're doing it. So when we think about negotiation, we've got a number of different types of negotiation. We've got what's called distributive. I win, you lose, or you win and I lose. That's one type of negotiation. What you see a lot more of these days is integrative negotiation, where we both win. We both aim to come out of this having won, having achieved something, having built a relationship around the negotiation, where we continue to negotiate in the future over different issues. We continue to work together. And ideally, we'd want to work together until we get to a place where we don't really need to negotiate that much. We both know what we want. We both know what we're trying to achieve. There's a synchronicity there that works for both of us. We need to think about the benefits of win-win, and that really is the longer term relationship, the continued deals, the way that we work together, the minimization of dispute resolution. While we're thinking about that, those are the other two main types of negotiation that you have. You have a negotiation for a deal. Now, I'm selling something you want to buy. I'm buying something you want to sell. How can we do that? How can we get the best position for each other out of that negotiation? Or we may be trying to resolve a dispute. And how do we go about that? And that's more about arbitration and negotiation. So we may want to bring in a third party, for example. What is it we're trying to do then? Why are we trying to do it? And this is where you need to go back to what is your goal and why do you have that goal? If we're trying to get to that dispute resolution, and sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes, we have to say, this is a dispute. We don't like each other. We can't work with each other. And the resolution might be, that's the answer. We're never going to be friends. We think about this. We're never going to be friends. We're never going to work together. Let's resolve this by deciding that that's what we will do. We won't work together. We won't deal with each other. We'll go off and we'll find other things. And you'll see this in private life as well as in business as well. The classic one is divorce, isn't it? You go through a divorce, there's always a dispute resolution. Who gets what? Who gets this? Who gets that? Who gets to see the kids? Who keeps the dog? All of those things are of a dispute resolution, very much benefited by negotiation and arbitration and conciliation as well. So those are the main types of negotiation. When we're doing that, we need to think about where we're coming from. There are 3 P's that I want you to think about when you're going into negotiation. Think about your position. Do you have a position of power, or is the other person holding all the power? And what does that mean in terms of negotiation? If you are in a position of power, think very carefully about how you use that power, because you want to have a win-win at the end of it. If the other person has the power, how can you tap into that power? What is it that you've got that they need, they want, they desire to have? And you can tap into that and minimize the effect of any misuse of power that they may be trying to do. Think about the perspective. Think about empathy. Where is this person now? What are they trying to achieve? Can I help them without beating them up? Or is it better for somebody else to do that? And the other P is about problems and solutions. So are we trying to solve a problem here? And if we are, what is the problem? What am I trying to achieve by it? Do I understand the problem enough? And if you were able to join me on the problem solving webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, this is a good place to tap back into that, because we need to understand the problem before we try and solve it, or the solution won't actually meet the problem. So we need to think about those 3 P's. What is my position? What is my perceived position? Do I have any hierarchy? If it's in an organization, I might be seen as being all powerful, and I can't negotiate with you because you are the de facto leader of this organization. So what is it I want from that? What is it I can bring to that? A classic one, of course, is thinking about pay rise. I'm negotiating for a pay rise. It's no good just going along and saying, I want more money. And I want more money because Fred's got more money, or Jill's got more money. They earn more than me, so I want to earn more money. What do I bring to this? What do I bring to this negotiation that gives you something for the money? Because if I'm just going and saying, I want more money, the answer is, well, we all want more money, but there isn't any more money, you can't have it. So what is it I bring? I bring skills, I bring empathy, I bring communication, I bring something that we need at the moment that will enable you to feel good about giving me more money. So part of this is about making the other person feel good. So we need to think about all of those things. And remember, it isn't a battle. And remember, you need to be ethical. If you go through this process, you come out at the end of the process and you've won, and they splashed out on the front page of your local newspaper, how are you going to feel? Now, that's a really important question. How are you going to feel about it when it gets out in the public domain? You're going to feel good? Or are you going to feel, I don't feel so comfortable about this? If you end up in the side where you think, I don't feel so comfortable about this, you need to review what you're doing, reflect on it, take some time, re-establish the negotiations. Because if you're not happy to talk about it out loud, you're not doing it in a way that fits for you. When we're dealing with other people, it's really important to try and understand as much of them about them as we possibly can. And there are very varying different personalities that we need to think about when we're looking at negotiation. But I'm going to deal with 4 of them today, just to give you a flavour and help you start thinking about the people that you're working with. So in terms of those 4, the first one we're going to look at is feelers, and feelers are people that consider people and friendships to be important. They're looking to build a relationship. You need to build in time in order to build that relationship with them, to help them feel at ease. They want you to feel at ease as well. So there's a good vibe in this straight away. They're not coming to battle with you. But because they're worried about feelings, they can miss the big picture and they can get stuck into the weeds. And we need to allow people time in order to do this. And they may not want to give you bad news. So they may not at the time be able to say no. So we need to bear that in mind and think about that when we're dealing with these people. Who am I dealing with? What can I expect from that discussion? We've got sensors, and sensors are very decisive. They're results-oriented people. They tend to keep their emotions to themselves. They can be a little bit boxed off, if you like. They're mission-focused and they like to get things done. But if you're working with a sensor, be very careful not to waste their time. They will want to do it, crack on, and go. Get on to the next thing. So think about what you bring to that. If you're dealing with a sensor, think about what you bring to the negotiation, what you bring to the table. Be very clear about what it is you're trying to achieve. If it's a problem-solving thing, be very clear about the problem that you're trying to solve, the deal that you're looking for, the outcome that you want. Be very clear about that before you get to the negotiation. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute or two. The next type of person we're looking at is the thinker, and thinkers are very organized, they're very logical, they work with data, they work with facts. They won't rush to make a decision, they will want to reflect, they won't want to be disorganized. They can be overly cautious and can be very concerned about the risks of things. They can see the opposite side of things, and they can say, well, if we flip this, what does it mean? What is the message we're giving? What does it say about what we're trying to achieve? And you're saying X, so the opposite of that is Y. Am I comfortable with that? So you need to allow, again, more time for working with thinkers. Think about the pros and cons that you bring. Think about the options that you're giving them. Are they going to be comfortable with that? Is it logical? Is it organized? Is it clear? And clarity is very, very important. And the last type of person we're going to look at today is the intuitor. And intuitors are highly enthusiastic and very creative. You're going to need to help them focus and stay on agenda. They will lose the picture and come up with all sorts of ideas that will just cloud your thinking. So you, in that role, need to pull them back to the agenda, pull them back to what it is you're trying to achieve. But remember, when you're dealing with intuitors, then you need to build in that extra time in order to do that. Because if you shut them down too soon, or if you're an intuitor and you get shut down too soon, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to get shut down and the negotiation is going to stall. It's going to be problematic. It's going to be troublesome. So you need to think about these things and think about, who am I dealing with? What do I know about them? What do they know about me? How can we be honest and open when we come to the table? How can I be clear about what it is I'm trying to achieve? What do I need to allow in terms of wobble room and comfort for that other individual? And what do I need for myself as well is really important. Do I need time? Do I need facts? What kind of personality do I have? And how am I going to play that into the whole negotiation? So I want to move on now to think about some steps that we need to go through as we're preparing for a negotiation and undertaking a negotiation. The negotiation is all about telling stories. It's the story from our side. This is what I want. This is how I see this playing out. How do you see it playing out? What's your version of the story? Making sure that we're listening to other people. If we're talking and we're not listening, we're just hearing but not listening, this isn't going to work for us. The negotiation will not work. We might get out of it what we want. We might come away from it thinking, actually, that person's an idiot. They won't even, they couldn't give me what I want. They're a waste of space. I don't want to deal with it. That's because we're not listening. What does the other person need? What are they trying to achieve? What are they after throughout this process? So the first step in all of this really is about preparation. So we've talked about finding out as much as you can about people. What do they want? Importantly, why do they want it? What they say they want and what they want might be two different things. So we're trying to get to, why do you want this? Why do you want this thing that you're after? Because that may open up a different area for negotiation as well. Now, for example, one example I read the other day was about a person trying to sell their house. A person trying to sell their house because they're at they're quite advanced in years and they want to move into a retirement home. The organisation who want to buy their house build and sell retirement homes. So you go into this negotiation thinking, I want to sell my house. I want X amount of money for my house. the organisation buying it thinks, I want to buy this house for as least money as possible, but still be realistic about it. But when you find out what each side additionally brings to the table, then there's another element to deal with. So the organisation were able to say, look, we're not going to pay what you want for the house, we're going to pay less for the house, but we can give you on top of that your retirement home. So here's what you want. We now understand why you're doing this, what you want from it. We can accommodate that and still walk away from this at a price that we're happy with. So those are the sort of things that you need to think about. What is it they want? Why is it they want it? When you're dealing with people, you need to make sure that you have the authority to negotiate and come to a settlement. They have the authority to negotiate and come to a settlement. Now that becomes much more important if it's more of a legalistic type of negotiation. So an example, if you're dealing with somebody and they want to buy your house, do they have the authority to buy your house? Do they have the authority to say, yes, I can go to that amount of money? Equally, if they're selling, do they have the authority to negotiate? Or is this process actually a waste of time because they're not the appropriate person to be negotiating with? So we need to think about all these things before we start. And the way we do this, we ask questions, we talk to people, we build that time in. We don't go straight into them and sit down and go, well, I'm going to pay you this, you're going to give me that. We don't do that. We build that relationship, even if it's not with the other person. We do our data searches, we do our research, and we prepare. Because if we don't prepare, we're not going to come out of this very well at all. We need to think about what's our BATNA. Now, BATNA is a phrase that you'll hear a lot when you think about negotiation. What's your best alternative to a negotiated agreement? Where's my walk away point? What's the point at which I will say, no, we can't do this. I'm going to have to go and find this somewhere else. Or I'm going to have to get somebody else involved. When we're thinking about alternatives, talk to other people. What other alternatives are available? What are my options outside of this negotiation? Do I even have to go into this negotiation? Very, very important. So when you think about negotiations, to have that freedom of choice to walk away, freedom of choice to say, no, I'm going this far and I will go no further. And think about if your position in there, if you're selling, be unique. Why does the other person need to deal with you? Have lots to offer potential customers. And so you're able to walk away. You have lots of other customers that you can deal with as well. If you don't buy this, that's fine. We don't gel, that's fine. You know, we're not sticking together. We don't have to work together. I've got other people that I can work with. I've got other people that I can talk to. You know, there are places that we can do things beneficial to both of us that just aren't together. So we need to think about that as well. We're not fixed. We're not tied to that one person. And if you're buying something, you really, really, really need to be able to walk away. Because if you can't, it's not a negotiation. You're held to hostage. If you go to buy a car and you say, I'm going to buy this car, I don't have any alternative, you've lost before you walk in the door. You're a hostage rather than a negotiator. So think about that really carefully as well. Definitely be able to walk away. Really, really important. We'll give you all the other things. We'll give you freedom of choice. We'll give you power. We'll give you a sense of authority and confidence. Think about the pie that you're dealing with as well. And we talked about this with the house example. What can you bring to the party that isn't clear? What is the other people? What can they bring to the party that will be benefit for you that may not necessarily be on the table as well when you first start? Don't assume that everything in negotiation is fixed. We're not just talking about price. We can be talking about services. We can be talking about added value. We can be talking about other things that can happen that will benefit the whole system of negotiation. Remember, it's not a competition. And remember that it's not a war. And remember that you need to act with ethical principles in order that you're happy. If this gets out into the public arena, you're happy you've done the right thing and you've done it well. Once you've done all your preparation, you're actually in the negotiation. It's really important not to jump the gun. You need to get to know the other side. Don't act too swiftly. You know, think about what their BATNA is as well. What point can they walk away? Think about your zone of potential agreement, ZOPA, we call it. So what is your zone of potential agreement? What's your lowest price? What's their highest price? So there you've got some scope about where you can come to a potential agreement. You need to build interest if you're selling. Why on earth would I buy this? Nobody buys a thing. People buy an outcome. There used to be a saying years ago that Black & Decker don't sell drills. Black & Decker sell holes in walls. Unless you're a tool collector, most people buy a drill because they need to do something with it. They need to put up a shelf, they need to put a hole in something, whatever it might be. So we need to build that interest into negotiation. Why should I deal with you? What is it? What is it that personally about you makes me want to negotiate with you, makes me want to spend my time dealing with you? And often it's those intrinsic values that you find, well, actually, it might not be the best price, but I've got what I wanted at a price I'm happy with, and I really want to deal with this person. At the moment, things are very different in the world, and a lot of small companies are finding that they're benefiting from this because I want to deal with a small shop. I want to deal with the people at the corner of my road. I don't necessarily want to deal with a large supermarket because they don't need me. They're going to carry on. They're going to survive whatever. But as we get out of this situation, if I feel that I've helped support the shop at the end of my road, I might get my goods there for a little bit more than I would pay at a supermarket. But I've gone through that negotiation in my own mind. Is that what I want to do? And that's something that we all do all the time. So think about all these things as you're going through. And only negotiate on price when the deal is conditional, not before. If you try to get to a price before the deal is conditional, you're wasting your time because you're just clouding the water. And if you're buying, the opposite applies. You want to get a price before you talk about the deal. So two sides of the coin here, acting very different ways. And once you understand how those two sides act, you can see where you are and you have a better understanding of where the other person is coming from or the other organization. We need to shoot for the stars. We need to aim high, but in a way that guards our reputation. We don't want to be ridiculous. But it's important to remember that where you start is not where you're going to finish either, because we may go into a negotiation and we say, we want to buy this thing that you're selling it for £100. So my aim is to get it for a tenner. So I'm going to offer you £10. Now, what you might find is that the person says, well, that's ridiculous, I'll go 90. Then you work your way till you get to the middle. Classic type of negotiation. But you might also find that the person says, you're just insulting me now. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to deal with you. That's my walkway. That's my BATNA. I've gone. So we've lost. The risk in terms of doing that on an organizational basis is nobody will deal with you long term because your reputation is not what people want to deal with ethically. Equally, if you're the other side, then you're trying to sell something and you go, I want £1 million for this. We go, that's ridiculous. So we have to think about what the real cost is. So we want to aim high, but we need to guard our reputation. So if you've got the preparation done, you've got the background information, and say you're buying something, you're buying a car, and you go along, you know that the average price for this car is going to be around £17,000. If you go in and say, I want to buy this car, I'll give you 10 grand for it, you'll be laughed at the showroom. But equally, if you go in and the salesman says, well, this car's 25 grand, you're going to go, no, it isn't. So I know the real cost of this. You're being ridiculous. We need to guard our reputation. You won't deal with that company again. So these are really important things. I feel like I'm laboring this, but it is a really important point to make. Typically, traditionally, we would always let the other side go first if we can. And we need to think about that because we may make an offer that's accepted first time and we may think, could have got that a bit cheaper, could have gone a bit higher, whatever it might be. So it's always a good idea if you can to let the other side go first. When we're thinking about prices in particular, if we're buying something, we need to think about anchoring and avoid anchoring because this is a really psychological bias that happens. If you have it in mind that the thing that you're selling is worth X, or the thing that you're buying costs X, you will anchor on that price. If somebody throws out a price and says, well, you do this for £500, I'm going to decorate your house and charge £500. Do you know that that's the real value and the real cost of decorating a house? Or are you going, £500, that seems reasonable? Ask somebody else and they go, actually, I'll decorate your house, it'll be £750. Well, that's really expensive compared to the other offer I've got. Then you talk to somebody else and they go, well, I'll do it for £300. You think, well, that's really good, I'll go with that. But what is the real cost? Going back to the car example, what is the real cost and the value of that? Because it may be you're anchoring on the first price you got, And the real cost of painting the house is actually £1,000, and the better deal would be the £750 one, because it's going to be a quality, it's going to be a better finish, better deal than trying to get it done cheaply. So avoid getting fixed on a particular number. It's really hard not to, but try and avoid it where you can. We need to trade concessions here, and reciprocity really does work. If you give something to me, I'm more likely to give something to you. Equally the other way around. If I give something to you, you're more likely to give something to me. And it really does work. You may think it doesn't, but it really does. And that's a really useful thing to consider when you're going into a negotiation. We need to make sure that we keep the whole picture in mind. Don't get lost in the details. Don't get tied up in the weeds. Think about not coming out with a Pyrrhic victory. Think about what's the longer term of this. If I'm going into this negotiation, what's my aim? If it's a single thing, fine, focus on that. But if it's a building a relationship, building a position where we can work together for a number of years potentially, what's the bigger picture here? What am I prepared to trade in order to achieve that bigger picture? I've put Basketball Gorilla there, and I don't know if some of us would have seen it, some of us may not have seen it. There's some great videos on YouTube if you type in Basketball Gorilla, where you have a number of people doing things and you're asked to count a ball bouncing. And at some point during that, a man dressed in a gorilla suit will walk through. And most people won't see it because you're focusing on the detail of the balls bouncing. And it's only when you're told that it happens and you go back and you have a look, you think, that's a different video, that didn't happen. And the point of this really is don't get lost in the details. Keep an eye on the bigger picture, because you can win the negotiation and lose the overall relationship. Keep trading those concessions all the time. Part of building that relationship, part of ongoing negotiations. What can I give? What can I take? What can I give? What can I take? And what can I give and take in a way that makes me feel good, makes me feel happy I've achieved something, makes me feel happy that you've achieved something. Everybody's winning here. Really, really important when you go into negotiation to keep accurate records, keep accurate notes as you go along. Replay them if the negotiation takes place over several days or several weeks. Keep playing them back to people. Summarize and clarify as you go along. This is my understanding. Is that what you think? This is how I see this. We've got so far. These are the steps that we've taken. This is the progress we've made. Do you agree that that's the same for you? Once you've got to the end of the negotiation, follow it up in writing. And if necessary, you might need to produce a contract. Now, a contract doesn't have to be a massive legal document. It doesn't have to be written up by a lawyer or a solicitor, although often that's the best thing to do. But as soon as you both agree something on paper and both sign it, that forms a contract. So think about what you're writing down. Think about what you're signing. Think about making sure that what you finally agree to reflects both parties and reflects what you've tried to achieve, how you've gone through the process, what are the ways you're going to work with each other and deal with each other if there are any problems as a result of this negotiation. Very often negotiations will throw up things that we hadn't potentially considered at the start. So you need to be aware of how you're going to deal with those, how you're going to deal with any disagreements, any potential confusion or troubles that come out as a result of this negotiation. And by summarizing it all and writing it all down, you'll be able to minimize those to a certain extent, because you'll both have an agreement of the picture rather than you be telling yourself a story and the other party be telling themselves a story, and the stories being very different to each other. Because we've not written it down and agreed it, that can cause problems later on. One of the most important steps that you can think about with negotiation is making time for reflection. How did it go? What went well? What didn't go so well? What would you do differently next time? How did it make you feel? How did you feel about this negotiation going into it, during it, and coming out of it? And I go back to that point I made some moments ago about what about front page news? If this appears on front page news, how are you going to feel then? Do you feel happy? Do you feel not so happy? Would you feel embarrassed? Would you be happy to meet the neighbours? Would you be happy to face family and friends? So think about this from an ethical point of view. How are you going to feel? How are you going to look when you come out of this? Some things for you to think about in terms of additional resources. Stories are very powerful, and we tell ourselves stories every day, and we need to be careful about the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell other people. And there's a whole do a whole piece about storytelling. That will be the basis of another webinar, so please look out for that. Think about one of the most useful resources you can think about in terms of older books is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey. He talks about all these things that will help you in a negotiation situation. So that's a good resource. And there are masses of resources on Management Direct, so I would urge you to have a look at those as well. And if you're a member, you get to access all that for free. Final thing I want to leave you with before I start looking at questions is think about a triangle when you're thinking about negotiating. You can have it good, you can have it cheap, or you can have it fast, but you can only pick 2. If it's good and cheap, it won't be fast. If it's fast and good, it's unlikely to be cheap. And if it's cheap and fast, it's certainly unlikely to be good. So think about those things as you go. All these things just to keep in mind. And that's it for me. I'm going to go back to Mel and ask some questions. Just to wish you all the best when you go into negotiations, and may your negotiations be successful, ethical, and may you come out of them feeling that was really good and I've achieved what I wanted to achieve without beating the other side up.
Brilliant, thank you, David. So we've had quite a few. So we've had quite a few pre-submitted questions come through. So I'll start off with the first one. So, how to negotiate a bigger salary and ask for more responsibility or a bigger role?
That's a really good question, and one that often comes up when we're thinking about negotiation. And I touched on it a little bit during the webinar, but it is about why. Why should I give you more money? And try and put yourself in the other person's shoes, and ask yourself, what would I give myself more money? If somebody else was coming to me and saying, I want more responsibility, on what basis would I give them that responsibility? Would it be that they need skills? Would it be that they need training? And if so, you might say, flip that around again, go to your manager and say, I would like more money. These are the reasons I need more money. These are the reasons I deserve more money. I believe I deserve more money. I'd also like more responsibility, and this is the reason I would like that. I believe I've demonstrated that I have the skills to be to take on more responsibility. I've attended this training. I'm willing to go on that training. What is it you bring to the table? And make it easy. One of the keys about negotiation is to make it easy for the other party to say yes. Whenever I go to buy a car, and I have cars on these 3-year deal things, I always say to the salesman, make it easy for me to say yes. I don't want a battle. I don't want a big discussion with this. You need to make me comfortable to say yes. And it's the same when you go for a pay rise. Make it easy for your boss to say yes. Or go somewhere to saying yes. So they may say, for example, you can have a bit more money, but we're going to tailor it over a number of years because we want you to do this training. And once you've achieved that, you can have it all.
Excellent. The next question is how to handle negotiations where unethical tactics are used, or where the first offer is final despite trying to negotiate with actual verifiable data.
That's a really good question as well, and I think this is where it comes to your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So if you have that in mind first, and you've done all your preparation, you've done your data checks, you've done your research, you've got your walk away position, you're in a much better place to say, actually, I'm not going to deal with you. This is unethical practice. There are other people available that I can deal with. I'm not going to deal with you. Sorry, Mel, what was the second part of that question?
Or where the first offer is final despite trying to negotiate with actual verifiable data.
Right, if the first offer is final, it's not a negotiation. You're hostage to them, and that's again where you need to have your walk away. So if there is no negotiation taking place, once you've done your preparation, are you prepared to pay that price? So we don't need to negotiate, or are you going to walk away? And we can think about buying things, and this is where eBay and Amazon win. They do the negotiation for us, if you like. We go to a shop on the high street. We may go to John Lewis or House of Fraser, and we think, well, that's the quality I want, that's the price I want. I'm prepared to pay that price. Or do we go to John Lewis and we say, actually, can you price match this? And so they do that negotiation for you. And you say, well, can you price match Amazon? They'll say no, because it's not the same kind of shop. So at that point, you have to say, okay, well, I'll walk away. I'll go to Amazon. That's my walk away. That's my BATNA. Or they may say, yeah, we'll price match with Debenhams because they're a similar shop to us. So we're prepared to give it to you cheaper. So there's always a room for negotiation. And if there isn't, walk away. Have that walk away, find someone else.
Excellent. The next question, how can someone bargain two businesses' deals simultaneously, sorry, I couldn't pronounce that word, where I am the middleman and not wanting to buy over budget and do want to sell it for a great deal profit?
I think this is where we need to be clear about, you say you've got two deals on at the same time. You need to ask yourself, are these deals with the same people? If they're not, split them up. Because trying to do two things at once is just going to cause confusion for everybody. And you run the risk of playing one off against the other in a way that doesn't come out well ethically at the end of the day. So think about, can I split them up? Can I deal with them as two separate deals? And what is the joint win that can play across both of them? So think about where there are joins. Think about that Venn diagram. Where's the sweet spot in the middle? And then deal with them separately to get to that sweet spot in the middle. If you try and mix them up, it will likely get confusing and far more challenging than it need be.
Brilliant. Another question, how to bargain without offending the client? Can you give it advice?
Preparation. Preparation is the key. Preparation is the key. Find out as much about the client as you possibly can. What is their culture? What are the feelings about this? Why are they trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve? Can you do that in a way that feels good for everybody? What do they bring to the table extra that you can bargain with? Think about your aiming high bit, but trying to keep your credibility and your reputation as well. And if you're working on building a relationship, that will avoid offending people in the first place. So what is it you want from this deal? I would say to the other person, what do you want from this deal? Why are you going into this deal? How can we get extra benefit from this that will make you feel happy in a way that I'm not going to offend you? I'm not going to say something that's inappropriate. Think about the culture of the people that you're negotiating with. Preparation.
Brilliant. We have another one as well. What is the best way to overcome personal agendas between departments in order to do what is best for the company?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would go back to the values of the organization. Is what you're trying to achieve in line with the values of the organization? If this got out, how would you feel about it? Is this something you're prepared to do in the public arena? If it's not, you need to rethink why you've got a personal agenda. And in a business situation, in a work situation, your agenda and your values ought to align with the agenda and the values of the organization for that overall win. So we're breaking down those silos that we see in a lot of organizations. We're breaking down that silo thinking and I win, you lose, or you win and I lose, which is, depending on what side you're on, is even worse. So think about what you're doing. Does it align to the values of the organization? Does it align to the ultimate goals of the organization? And if it doesn't, you need to say, well, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to achieve it? Is my personal agenda overriding that of the organization? And if it is, you need to take a step back and reflect. A, am I in the right organization? B, am I acting ethically and appropriately? And should I adjust my behavior? And C, how would I feel if this was in the news? That gut thing is really, really important. It's never likely to appear on the front page for most of us. But if it did, how would you feel? I think that's, again, those ethical questions in negotiation are really important.
Excellent. So we have a few pre-submitted, obviously we've answered quite a lot of pre-submitted questions already. There are a few live comments that have come through, which I'll pop up for you to answer as well. There's a question from DG. How do you negotiate a win-win with somebody looking for a win-lose?
Walk away. If you really can't do it, I would take on board all the things I've said this morning. If you can't get towards a win-win and you're not happy with the win-lose, and why would you be, then walk away. You don't have to do this. You don't have to negotiate. And if you do have to, make sure you're not a hostage and go for that win-win. Keep working at it, keep digging at it. Keep saying, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We need to go a bit further. I need to get a bit more love from you. I can give you more love. I need to get more love from you so we can both end up with a win-win. If you're persisting, I lose, then we need to either bring in arbitration, bring in a third person, a third party to help us with this, or we need to be able to walk away. Brutal answer.
Brilliant. So we have one more question to go and I will close down. So it's from Janet. What will you advise if one of the parties who agreed on the terms and conditions of a negotiated and agreed project collaboration changed his or her mind and decided not to sign the contract? What advice can you give?
Morning, Janet, and that's a great question. And this comes back to a kind of a sort of pseudo legal position. If you've agreed the contract and then you are looking for a change, you change your mind, you change the contract. In effect, that contract no longer exists, and you need to start the process again. So I would start asking questions. What is it about what we've agreed that you're no longer happy with? How can we get to a position where we're both happy again? I understand that you're not comfortable. I understand that you don't want to sign, but can you tell me why? Let's have a look at why. Is there something we can do, or have we got to the point where we can't actually, this isn't going to progress any further? So try and understand why. Try and understand what else you can put in to sweeten the deal that still makes you feel like a winner as well as them feeling like a winner, and see if you can work around that. And sometimes it is bringing in a third party to arbitrate that for you.
Brilliant. Well, that is it for today's session, and thank you to everyone who has joined us, and also thank you to David for your insights and expertise throughout today. If you are a member of CMI, you can access Management Direct, which has a whole range of practical resources to help apply your learnings from today, as David mentioned earlier. For anyone new to CMI or those who haven't heard of the Management Direct portal, it's full of personal and professional development opportunities, which includes over 400 videos, 10,000 journal articles and more. You can also sign up to your first year's membership and get 10% off using the promo code SUMMER10. Do also sign up for our free CMI newsletter, which you can access on our website, managers.org.uk. Thank you again for listening and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks, everybody, for listening.